Good morning, Unity of Payson. If you're listening to us now and viewing this virtual meeting, I'm going to consider you a part of Unity of Payson. So welcome this morning. I'm Rev Neal Worthington, and I'd like us to take a moment to just pause, quiet our minds, quiet our bodies, and be here now. And as we join together, let me open with a brief prayer. God of all goodness, we are grateful for grace, an unlimited grace that is waiting for us to receive it. That grace is coupled with love, the fabric of the universe. And we have yet to receive it in the measure that it's being offered, because it's unlimited. So as we join together this morning, I am grateful for each who has joined with us for this time together and this truth that we consider. And so it is. Time this morning will go like this. I'll share the message that's on my heart to share with you. After that, I'll have a few remarks. We'll listen to some music that goes along with the theme of what we're talking about today. And then we'll close. It'll be brief, and I hope you'll stay with us and have an opportunity to reflect on the truths that resonate with you. There's a story that goes like this. Man came to the end of his earthly life and appeared at the gates of heaven, and of course was met by St. Peter. And St. Peter was standing before the pearly gates, and he said, "Here's how it goes. In order to get these pearly gates to open, you have to total up 100 points. And I want you to tell me all of the things that you have done in your life that are good, and I'll total up the points, and when you get to 100, the gates will open." The man thought briefly and said, "Well, I've been married to the same woman for 50 years, and I've never thought about anyone else but her." St. Peter said, "Oh, that's good. That's worth 3 points." The man was a little taken back, but he went on to say, "And I went to church every Sunday, or almost every Sunday. I gave my tithes and I gave service to the church in many, many ways." And St. Peter said, "Well, that's good for 1 point." He was beginning to get exasperated. He said, "But I started a soup kitchen, and I worked with homeless veterans." St. Peter said, "That's good. That's worth 2 points." Greatly exasperated, the man said, "Well, how can I get into heaven?" St. Peter said, "Nothing." The man looked again. He says, How? I can only get in by the grace of God." St. Peter's response was this: "You got it. Come on in." Well, that's not exactly how I view getting into heaven, not exactly how I view heaven, because that's a bit of a story that we've concocted over time. But heaven is a place, a situation, here in this time, in whatever circumstance we are. Heaven is that place where we rise above, where our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are consistent with the Christ within. And we experience heaven on earth. We experience the divine coming through us and coming to us, and we call this grace. The title for this message is Receiving Grace, and that's what we'd like to talk about today. Last week I gave you a little work on definitions of grace, but I want to look at it from a somewhat different perspective today. Something found in the Course of Miracles where it says that grace is the acceptance of the love of God within a world of seeming hate and fear. And from this, I put together what I call a key spiritual truth on the topic of receiving grace. And here that is. When I acknowledge divine grace and allow it to come to me, I am able to freely accept it. Let me give that to you one more time. When I acknowledge divine grace and allow it to come to me, I am able to freely accept it. We'll talk a little bit more about what's grace, how to live in a state of grace. What is it? How can we do that? And what would it be like if we did? I like to think that acknowledging divine grace is the opening of heart-mind, not just the rational mind, not just the feeling heart, but that heart-mind that is open to knowing, that is open to choosing, that is open to creating. Love has already been talked about, and it's so very parallel and linked with grace. We speak about love as being the very fabric of the universe, that which creates all things, that which is the substance that is within all of creation. Love that we sometimes miss out on because we're not able to receive that love. So in a very real way, love and grace are equals, are parallel with one another, and could even be said to be the same thing from a slightly different point of view. We don't experience that grace. We don't acknowledge it, sometimes because we don't believe it. We don't believe that this is possible, this unlimited grace. Well, we don't believe it because we have not taken the time and the diligence to establish that belief. Belief really is nothing other than a thought you've thought over and over again. It may have been given to you by a mentor or your parents, and you continue to think that thought, and so you have a belief. Or it can be something that you choose, something that resonates with you, and you choose that. I say choose the highest and the best. We don't believe in the grace. Well, then start building a belief in that grace. Sometimes we have, as I mentioned, that closed mind, that opinionated, closed mind, and that closed heart as well, not willing to be vulnerable. And also closed hands. It's almost as though we have our fists closed and we're not able to receive. So it's a matter of being able to open hands, open heart, and open mind. Over New Year's, my wife and I watched a nice little romantic comedy movie called About Fate. And in the movie there were two couples, an old couple who had been married for over 50 years and a young couple on their way to being linked together. And as they met, the old couple shared some wisdom with the young couple. The young couple was headed for a wedding, but the young woman was dressed poorly. The coat was very shabby. The older woman had on a beautiful pink carnation coat. And as they parted, the woman said, "Here, take my coat. You're going to the wedding. You need this coat." It's a coat she had worn for over 50 years and had much nostalgic significance. But she said, "Take my coat." And the young woman said, "Oh, I can't. That means so much to you. I've heard your story. It means so much, I can't take it." And the older woman, in her wisdom, said this: "When the universe gives you a gift, just take it." For us, the universe has provided grace, love in unlimited measure. Just receive it. So receiving this grace is a matter of allowing. Removing blockages or surmounting challenges. And there are reasons why we don't do that. Reasons why we don't allow. First of all, our self-appraisal is a little weak sometimes. I don't deserve that grace, that gift. And sometimes we just think small. I think I've been guilty of that, but I'm learning to think big. Right now, another member of our community here is working hard, and I'm trying to work with on kindness, the matter of kindness. We begin to think of, couldn't our world be so much better a place if we just experienced basic kindness? And we thought of it, at first we thought in terms of a very small way of pursuing that expression of kindness, and then it got bigger and it got bigger and it got bigger. And in our minds now it's a movement, a kindness movement. Don't think small. Let your thinking be big. Let your dreams be big, particularly when they're prompted by that grace that's there waiting for you. Sometimes we don't allow grace because we don't care for ourselves. We run ourselves ragged, or we just let ourselves get run down. Very difficult to receive grace when we don't care for ourselves, because in fact, grace, because it comes to us, and as we give it to ourselves, we realize it in fullest measure. Sometimes we work at cross purposes. We say we want one thing, but we're really proceeding toward another thing. Grace can't come to us when we're working at these cross purposes. As we're able to take and focus on that which we really, truly desire, focus so that other purposes that are conflicting cannot get in, then grace can come. There are a couple other things that I think are the biggies about why we don't allow grace. Pride and arrogance. Pride, of course, is one of the 7 deadly sins. The antidote, humility. But we often say, I've got to do it by myself. I'm going to pull myself up by my own bootstraps. Or we say, I don't want to receive, I want to always give. It's better to give than receive. Well, I suggest that the truth of the matter is it's best to give and to receive. And we've talked about that in other times. Or we're too busy. We're doing something, our own agenda. And our pride keeps us from receiving grace and allowing it. Or we're just loath to accept the gift. Arrogance. Us saying, I don't need what you've got to give. In essence, saying to the divine, I don't need what you've got to give. I'm me. I'm going to take care of it all by myself. That's a bit of arrogance. We talked about opening to the gifts of the universe. When we do that, we do it because it connects with our heart's desire. To just stomp on or quash our heart's desire is an arrogant act. And so we do not allow, and there are things that we must release in order to allow grace. And finally, to accept grace. Accepting grace is a matter of, like I said, it is best to give and to receive, to be a part of that cycle of giving and receiving grace and allowing grace to extend from us. And we'll talk about that next week. But I think accepting grace comes down to making use of the abilities, the divine abilities that are given to us, that are our heritage as children of the divine. And those in unity are called the 12 powers. And I think that there are several of those 12 powers that really are appropriate in our discussion of grace. First one is faith, the ability to believe with confidence. Faith, the ability that we have to believe, to choose belief, to establish belief, and to know it with confidence. The gift of wisdom, of course. The ability to evaluate and apply what we know. Wisdom. Love, of course, that we've equated almost with great, the ability to harmonize, to unify. These are our gifts, all of these, which we can express. Will, that ability to choose, to discern and to choose, to know what is our true heart's desire and to choose it. And finally, release, to let go, because there are quite a few things which we must release in order that we may receive grace. How do I do that? I always like to end up with that question. How do I do this? I'm going to suggest a couple of things. Part of grace is we just miss it for many of the reasons that we've already spoken about. So I challenge you to be with me this week to take a grace list. Write grace on the top of a piece of paper. If you need more than one piece, that's going to be fine before the week is out. And just notice grace. Grace coming to you, grace coming to somebody else, grace extended from somebody else. Notice grace. Grace, the love that releases us from hate and fear. So the first thing is the grace list. Next one's a little bit difficult because we are so unused to it. We're so protective of ourselves that we don't become vulnerable. In order to receive grace, in a sense, we need to open ourselves up to be vulnerable. So I challenge you this week to look at where you are closed and to find one place where you can open a little crack that you're usually closed. People won't like you less. They'll love you more. As you're a little bit vulnerable, you're much more open to grace. And finally, The question of what is mine to let go so that grace may increase. Because grace is that good that's always inclined to increase. What do you need to let go? Is it something in the arena of pride and arrogance? Or is it just some habit that kind of blocks the receipt of grace? Is it some pattern in your life? Is it some person in your life? Is it some relationship in your life? At least that may be asked of you to let that go. Because in letting it go, you can move forward. You can move upward. So remember those three things. Grace list. Notice grace. How can I be just a little bit more vulnerable? Because then I will be open to grace. And what is mine to let go so that grace can increase? Back to that opening, that idea, not of the heaven with pearly gates and St. Peter waiting for you, but that state of consciousness that rises higher and higher, that awakens and lifts you up as you lift it up. Let's create that heaven by being able to receive grace. Heaven, again, is the state where I acknowledge divine goodness, release what impedes it, and allow it to flow into and through me. Let's take a short time to reflect on the truth that we've heard today. And as you do that, perhaps your attention has been drawn a little bit one way or another. Let's be still. Because it is in this stillness that we access grace. That we take those acts inspired by Spirit that help us to access grace. Just breathe for a moment with me. Notice your breath. Much in the way you're going to be noticing grace this week. And be grateful. Grateful for that unlimited pool of grace offered for you to receive. And then, what is it that you are to release in order to be able to accept that grace? The beginning of the year is often a time when we do a ceremony called the Burning Bowl Ceremony. And you may want to do this on your own. You may want to take a piece of paper, write down those things that come to you. They just arise from your knowing. Things that impede you, things that are up for release. And write those things on that piece of paper. The length of the list is up to you. What are you being asked to release? Don't look back. Just what comes to you, and know that it's yours to release. And as you're writing that down on paper, either now or later. Realize that the cleansing of spirit, the fire of spirit, will help you with that release. And so that which you would release, put in the flame, or let it dissolve in the water. As you release that keeps you from the receipt of grace. Now bring your attention back to this time, the place where you are. Knowing that you've a track ahead of you to receive and be blessed immensely by divine grace. We're going to take just a moment to listen to a song that is so attuned to what we've just been speaking about. Continue your reflection as we listen to I Release, I Let Go.
I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. All is well, all is well. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. All is well, all is well, all is well. And every day I affirm and pray that I'm blessed with everything I have. I release my fear, 'cause it's all so clear. I am held, I am loved, I am safe. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I am well, I am well, I am well. And now I see what my life can be when I trust in the process and have faith. And now I know when I just let go that I have all I'll ever need. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I am well, I am well, I am well. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. I relax, let go, release and surrender. All is well.
We came to a little bit of an abrupt end. but I have to kind of chuckle sometimes when I look at the images that go with that song. So, just a couple of remarks. Unity of Payson is so much more than just what we've experienced here this morning. I encourage you to go to our website, unityofpayson.org, where you'll see a calendar of activities. Many of our activities, in fact, most of them are virtual, wherever you are. We invite you, we heartily invite you to join with us in any of these activities. They are open and welcoming. At Unity of Payson, you'll also find a button that says Donate. If you've been blessed by these words or by Unity of Payson, or you just feel that tug to give back, we invite you to make a gift to Unity of Payson and this ministry. So let's review as we close, and let's do that in a closing prayer. Again, we say, God of all goodness, may we see and may we acknowledge divine grace. May we open ourselves, our heart, our mind, and our hands, and allow grace to come to us and through us. And may we accept it, choosing that which calls to us from deep within us as a response to the grace that we receive. We are grateful, and so it is. Amen.